started in COVID, and it kind of morphed into what it is today. So one of the reasons that we decided to put this together was is that we wanted to talk to people who have succeeded. So when I say succeeded, it appears to be you're at the top of the pyramid. But we know that there's a lot of transitions, U turns, left turns, right turns in getting there. So we like to start the conversation basically asking you to walk us through your career journey to where you are today. Covered some key highlights of that.
Thank you, Ron. So, I was reflecting back. I've now been working for over 40 years. So, the first 10 years were in finance. So, started back home in England, where I was born and grew up. Um, so, my early jobs were all in finance. First two in the music industry, but then I quickly discovered that the music industry doesn't pay well. I then pursued a chartered accountancy degree with the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. And I was with KPMG Pete Marwick for just under 8 years in their London offices. And it was great exposure because as our clients were from all different types of industries. And I got a chance to really understand business and understand how companies grew in different industries. And I remember one of my clients acquired over a series of 3 years, they bought 30 companies, and that was just phenomenal. And they used to ask me to go in and look at these companies and then give them a report to the CFO. So I enjoyed that very much, but I realized it was time for a change. And that's when I joined a company called ICI, and I joined their pharma division. And that was my first exposure to healthcare and to the pharmaceutical industry. I was with ICI for a year, and then I guess I did well in the pharma. They promoted me and sent me to the paints division. So ICI had 7 divisions. So now I find myself in the paints division, and I just somehow could not connect to paints. So one day the headhunter calls me and he says, do you know Eli Lilly? Would you be interested in interviewing with them? And I did not know of Eli Lilly. So he then says, okay, have you heard of Prozac? I said, yeah, everybody knows Prozac. He says, well, Eli Lilly are the manufacturers of Prozac. And I said, okay, yeah, I'd be very interested. And fortunately, I was able to join Eli Lilly, and a phenomenal company. I ended up having a career with them for 26 years with Eli Lilly, across several different markets. And what I benefited really from working in Eli Lilly is I started in Lilly in finance, but Lilly is a company that gives talents the opportunity to experience different roles. And they allowed me to, so from being a CFO, I went back to being a sales rep. And they trained me on what being a sales rep would be. Yeah, what would entail. I had to learn about the science behind the brands. I would go and call on doctors and detail the features and benefits of our brand. Prozac was one of those brands. So yeah. It was a great global brand. So I carried the bag and I promoted Prozac. I then went on to become a district sales manager, which is also a foundational role that Lilly likes leaders to experience. That taught me a lot. It was my first time managing a diverse team of 10 sales reps. And from there, Lilly gave me the chance to become a general manager. And because of my, I guess, heritage and connections with Pakistan, my first GM assignment was in Pakistan. Followed by then a move to Bangkok, where I was heading the Southeast Asia market, and as well as the general manager for Thailand. So ended up falling in love with Asia, stayed 16 years in Bangkok, and had multiple different roles, including while I was in Bangkok, Lilly gave me a chance to be the regional HR director for Asia. So I moved into HR, had 3 years in HR, and that's when I developed this passion of how to connect with leaders such as yourself, in the L&D community, and had the opportunity to deliver leadership programs for Eli Lilly. So these were in-house
Wow.
created leadership programs. But after 26 years with Eli Lilly, I thought it was time for again another change. And actually, COVID had just started, and this opportunity came up to join Zuellig Pharma. Their corporate headquarters are in Singapore, so I wanted to change both in country as well as in company. And what attracted me to Zuellig Pharma, it's one of the leading healthcare companies in Asia. They provide world-class distribution, digital and commercialization services. It's a family company, so it's over 100 years old. Today, with a revenue of $16 billion, over 12,000 employees in 16 markets.
Wow.
And I had this opportunity to join them as the EVP for their commercialization division, ZP Therapeutics. This allowed me to really use the skills that I'd honed at Eli Lilly and apply them here at Zuellig Pharma. But also within ZP Therapeutics, we have an ethical pharma business, but we also have a consumer healthcare business. And I had not worked in consumer healthcare before. So I thought this is a great opportunity to learn something new, experience consumer healthcare, which did fascinate me. How do you build brands? How do you grow brands? So it's been a fantastic 3.5 years here in Zuellig and here in Singapore, having moved during COVID.
Yeah.
So,
I remember when you moved there, and I remember I was just telling we were just commiserating on the last time we met was at a car accident. We were in Bangkok, and we were going to go to a concert or whatever it was. We got into a car accident at the last minute. So that was the last time we had physically connected. But here's what kind of intrigued me about the story. So you started in finance, flipped around to sales. So you've had these journeys to say, you know what, I'm going to try something different. And you always kind of knew when it was time to kind of make that change. What was the sense of that? Say, it's time to do something else.
Yeah, I think it's important to, especially early on in a career, to take some risk and to experience new functions, new challenges, and to really come out of your comfort zone, especially if you're supported. So again, I think I was very, very blessed and lucky to work for a company that does this consistently. It gives people the opportunity, if you articulate your passion and what you want to do, and you're willing to learn. So learning agility is important. You're mobile, and you're willing to really start from the beginning. And I've consistently seen them do this with leaders across the world globally. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting because so many talents along their career journey with Eli Lilly are going through the same thing. So there's a camaraderie. Yeah, you reach out to the people that are kind of going along the same journey, and you share your mistakes. We all make a lot of mistakes early on, and there's a strong support group. I always say working at Lilly was like working for a family. You really create a bond with your colleagues. And the friendships last decades.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. That's amazing. So if you look back on all of those changes that you've made, could you look at one to say this was pivotal when I made this decision to move beyond something else?
I think leaving finance is exciting, don't get me wrong, but I think joining the pharma industry And so here's the thing: when I was at school, um, I failed biology, I failed chemistry, and I failed physics. Um, and so I failed all of the sciences, and I had to change school. And my father he put me into finance. He figured, well, he's good at maths, so he'll be okay with finance. But all of my friends stayed in science, and they went on to become doctors. So I know so many doctors. Yeah, they're all my friends, and most of them moved to the US. They're practicing in so many different states in the US. So I thought, okay, well, I can't be a doctor, but at least if I join the pharma industry, my friends will not be able to practice without the medicines that pharma provides to the HCP community. I guess that's what attracted me to pharma. And
Mm-hmm.
then importantly, when you work in the healthcare industry, um, you can be really, really pleased. Every day you're excited to be contributing to the community that you
Mm.
serve. You know you're making a difference.
Yeah,
And that really rang true during COVID-19,
yeah.
where the industry stepped up in ways that were unbelievable.
You gave me flashbacks when you were talking about the sales and you talked about carrying the bag, because any salesperson knows carrying the bag, knocking on the doors, that was the key to that. And it's for my size, I started in sales, so I definitely understand that. So when you think of, you mentioned your father said, okay, that maybe this is not for you, so let's try a different direction. Let's talk about inspirations in your life. Who's been that guiding force to say, give you that advice that you just had?
Yes, no, very early on in life, I think I drew inspiration from my father. Um, he and my mum, they arrived in London in their early 20s, and they built their lives in a new country. Went on to have 9 children, and they built homes both in the UK and in Pakistan so that their children would remain in touch with their heritage.
Okay.
My father successfully ran businesses in London and in Karachi. At one stage, he had 6 different businesses, and you know, um, he opened an accounting and tax firm, and was at one stage employing more than 20 people in London. Um, and it was very interesting because the majority of his clients, who were English, they struggled pronouncing his name, and so they would call him John, and hence his firm became, it was called John Accountants and Company. Um, so my father was excellent at building relationships and at networking, and he would know literally everyone and people from all walks of life. Um, he was also a religious man, and he would visit Saudi Arabia for Hajj pilgrimage
Yeah.
almost every year, having performed Hajj 14 times.
Wow.
Yes. Um, and this inspiration really influenced my career and my leadership style in several ways. So, firstly, as I mentioned, I too pursued an accounting degree, and I became a chartered accountant in England. And like I said, I spent 8 years at KPMG in their London offices. But it also taught me the importance of relationship building and networking, skills my father really mastered to grow his business and connect with people from diverse backgrounds. So I've learned to really value every individual's contribution, and to foster a sense of community within our team. And then, moreover, his religious devotion really instilled in me a sense of discipline and spiritual grounding. And these are qualities that have enabled me to lead with integrity, and to prioritize the well being of my team, ensuring that we not only achieve our goals, but we grow together as individuals.
So when you talk about relationships, because when you look at young people getting out of school, they're concentrating on the technical side, but you leave on a Friday, you get promoted and come back on a Monday. It's a different skill set. It's relationships. How do you build that? What advice would you give to someone who is a new manager who this is the first time they've managed people. They left on a Friday being a part of a team, and now they come back on a Monday, and now you're in charge of 7 people.
So one of the mistakes I made very early on, when first time I was managing that in my district sales manager role. So I had a team of 10 people, and I wanted each and every a member of my sales team to hit what we call the Apex Award. So the Apex Award was the company's best award for sales representatives.
Okay.
So across the company, it was maybe awarded to 10% of the sales force. And I wanted all of my team members. I said, you guys are going to win the Apex Award. Now, what I didn't realize is maybe that's not what everybody in the team wants.
Yes.
And I think I drove them crazy going after that. But then I realized and I had a great coach at the time. She said, you got to understand, where are people in their own leadership journey and careers? What are the priorities that they are grappling with in their personal lives, etc.? What are their career aspirations? And that's when I started tailoring the approach. I am happy to say that first year, 3 of the 10 did achieve Apex.
Okay.
So that was fantastic. But now I know it's more important to have those early conversations. So any new manager leading a team needs to maybe learn about situational leadership, something that is taught in many companies, and how you get the best out of your individual team members, because each of them brings a different strength to the team.
Wow. So we do a leadership development program that's based on that, symphonic C-suite. So every person plays a different instrument. And as that leader, you need to understand how that instrument is played, what's the motivations behind that. So all that's cool. So but a key point that you mentioned there is that you had a coach back then, whereas now that's kind of assumed as a normal thing. But you were insightful enough to say, I need a mentor, coach, whatever you want to call that person. How did that come about?
Well, absolutely. Again, I was new in sales, and I was the first time as a district sales manager. When you're new in a role, it's important that you do have people that have experienced what you've experienced and are willing to share what they learned from the role. So for me, having mentors is very, very important at every stage of your career. And the advice I would give around mentoring is, somebody once told me Tiger Woods had several coaches, because the skill to hit a ball 300 yards is very different to putting it 3 yards yeah. So yeah. He had a coach for driving, he had a coach for putting, and then he had a coach for building his physical stamina, and also the mental part of the game, and just like that. So in life, it's important to know what is it that you want to develop. Yeah. And then you seek out experts in that area. And hence, people should not restrict themselves to having 1 or 2 mentors. These days, everybody talks about AI and technology, and AI is a very specialized area. Now, say if you and I don't know about it, it's great to have a mentor who can teach us about AI. Mm-hmm. So the advice I always give is, go attend these often seminars and conferences that are happening. And if somebody impresses you in that seminar, just go up to them later on and exchange cards, and then invite them to lunch. Exactly. I found that nobody ever says no to lunch, and it's a great way to meet somebody new, and then just say, look, I was very impressed with you during the conference or seminar, and can I invite you to be my mentor? And I'd say 90% of the time people would agree. Leaders want to give back, and they'd be more than delighted to connect.
You've had an amazing journey, but the key points that you're mentioning, the relationship building, understanding that that's not my strength. How do I get better at that? And then you think about your father and coming over and building all of these business. You've had a very great blueprint to kind of build this out. So as you manage your team, and I'm sure you have a large team across Asia, are you implementing those styles into your next level of leaders, maybe the minus ones or twos or whatever it would be?
Well, firstly, I'm blessed. We do have a very diverse and large team. So there's 20 people on the team that reports into me. We have 10 general managers and then 10 functional leaders. And one of the things that we practice across the team is what I call field presence. So something you'll be familiar with, having worked in sales, the importance of getting out of the office, going out into the field,
Yes.
spending time with your frontline employees, with your managers, meeting customers, meeting clients, seeking feedback. And the more we go out, you're able to get the feedback that is necessary to continuously improving your operation. So yeah, I'm happy to say we have a team that kind of believes in this. They go out, they network well, and they're continuously identifying opportunities for how we can grow the business and how we can improve.
The the CHRO from UPS, I always reference him. He's a friend of mine. Every quarter, he puts on the brown uniform and he rides the truck. He delivers packages, and he spends a
Nice.
day not
Brilliant.
sitting inside of a conference room, a focus group, or whatever it is. And he's listening to one person. I'm listening to one person across the company, and people are sending him notes saying, can you come and visit me next? But he understands the business as a result of that. So that's kind of the same thing that you're talking about.
Absolutely. We go out with our sales reps, and what I like about that is often the best ideas come from them because they're front line. They're meeting the doctors on a daily basis, um, and we as leaders, if we can figure out how we can support our sales, marketing, medical access teams better, how we can improve their productivity, it has a tremendous impact on results.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk a little about your leadership style. So I remember in conversation, you mentioned to me the 4 Ps. So kind of walk through that, your interpretation of the 4 Ps.
Yeah, so something I kind of learned and practiced very early on is focusing on 4 Ps. So the Ps are, the first one is people, the second one is products, the third one is process, and then the fourth one is the outcome. So if you have great people, and if you figure out and you have great products and you focus on a few but robust processes, then the outcome should be the fourth P, which is performance.
Okay.
So within those 4 Ps, like starting with people, so the focus on within the first P, people, is around recruitment, attracting the best talents, fostering an inclusive environment, and building diverse teams. And once you recruit and you have the best talents, then it's about development. How do you continuously invest in their development, both internally but externally? This is where we really connect with leaders such as yourself in terms of how do we build our leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And then importantly, recognizing rewarding contributions and really focusing on building high performing teams that deliver great results, but importantly also have fun. So
Are you
that
doing it?
while you're doing it, exactly. So that's under the people piece. Then on products, the focus is really ensuring that our products meet and exceed the customer expectations, encouraging innovation, creative problem solving, um, continuously improving based on the feedback from clients and customers. and then really aligning our product strategies with overall business objectives. So that's all under products. On processes, it's about streamlining our operations, encouraging continuous improvement and lean methodologies, leveraging technology to automate and optimize workflows. Um, and it doesn't mean focusing on a lot of processes, but the ones that are important to your business and your industry. And then I've found over the years that if we get the people, the product, and the process, those first three right, the performance should follow.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be a surprise, but it helps to have very clear, measurable goals aligned with the vision, um, and then fostering a culture of accountability and ownership. And then lastly, really celebrating the successes and the learning as we go along. Now, there is one other fifth P that kind of underpins the four Ps, and that is passion. Yeah, and it comes from within. You want people to get up in the morning and really be excited about
Yeah.
how today they're going to make a difference,
Yeah.
how they're going to contribute to the communities they serve, but also in how they really help their team and their organization be successful.
Mm.
So we practice the four Ps. It's something I've kind of rolled out in different countries, and it seems to work. People
Yeah.
seem to get it, and they can really rally behind this, um, and it helps elevate, everybody's performance.
Mm. It's key from my side that you anchor that first P under people. And when you were talking through that, I remember reading the book about Bill Campbell, who was kind of the guru CEO coach of even the Google guys when they started out. And he says, always start with people. So he kind of coached them to say, when you're having that weekly, monthly meeting, talk about people first. The numbers can come later, but let's talk about the people side of it. And I think that's kind of the same approach you're using.
Absolutely. No, it starts with the people. And actually, our team meetings, they actually start with compliance. So because under people, we say we want high performing teams with high integrity. So we actually have elevated compliance so that all of our meetings start with compliance. In our industry, in the pharma industry, this is critical. It's
Oh, it
it's
is.
pivotal. Um, and it's very, very important to our clients. So yes, we start with compliance, and then we focus on the people elements.
Mm. You mentioned earlier in the conversation how you had moved into paints and you didn't get paints. So sometimes when you think of a career move, you may go into a different industry. I left Martha Stewart, which was a creative company, and I went to Xerox, which was a consulting firm. And then I ended up in Saudi Arabia for a company that handled aircrafts. Aircraft mechanics was the key roles. I'd never got that. And I realized it probably wasn't for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, every company or every, I mean, they're all contributing to the economy, to society. But I think it's what excites you. I mean, I think that's what people should maybe follow their passion and kind of quickly figure out, what gets them out of bed excited.
Yeah.
And I have to say, and I'm happy to convince anybody that wants a career in healthcare and pharmaceuticals. It is very, very meaningful. I mean,
Yeah. You got to take a picture.
exactly. Yeah.
So, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, especially when you have life-saving medicines, you're helping make a difference. You're saving lives, and that became true during COVID-19.
I have good friends of mine in Pakistan that started a company called Deaf Pakistan. And it was for kids, for families who had kids that were deaf. And the reason they got into that because their first child was born deaf, and there was no infrastructure to handle a child who was deaf. and they got into it and they built up over the years, and they've now employed 300 to 400 people. But I was always impressed whenever I meet with them, whenever I'm in Pakistan, the passion that people have working there. So they're working there because there's a bigger picture. It's not a salary that's keeping me there. It's not the next promotion that's keeping me there, but it's that big picture. What advice would you give to CEOs or industries? How do you build passion around your organization, around your workforce, to connect people to the bigger picture?
Yeah, I think it's very important to have a vision for the organization, and what is it? What is the mission? And we're very lucky at Zuellig Pharma. Our mission is making healthcare more accessible, and we spend time explaining how we do that to our employees. So whenever somebody joins and as part of their onboarding, we really instill in them what is it, what is this mission, and how do we deliver on this. And then what's very important is people play different roles in the company. Now, whatever role they are playing, how does it connect back to that mission and vision? Because no matter whether you're in an office role or you're in a field role, everybody comes together to deliver that mission. And I think it's important that we spend time on the mission and vision, but also the values.
Mm-hmm.
Employees need to know what are a company's values, which don't usually change. So Eli Lilly was a 144-year-old company and had the same three values throughout that time.
Okay.
Zuellig Pharma has had the same values for decades, and employees understand those values and commit to those, and hopefully the values and the mission inspires people to stay with the organization. And if employees are able to align their own values with the company's values, they should have enriching careers.
In driving that. You're in an industry that's going through innovation, new products are coming out the pipeline. How do you stay ahead of the learning curve? How do you learn as a leader in pharma? How do you learn as a leader? How do you learn to become a better leader? Walk us through a few of those steps.
I guess we're very, very lucky for the pharma industry. There's a lot of sources of information so there are these daily newsletters that literally come out and keep you informed of what is the innovation that different companies are focusing on. So I also enjoy attending these global conferences. So 3 weeks ago, I was at ADA. This is the American Diabetes Association. A meeting this year it was in Orlando.
Okay.
And that's a real opportunity to go meet global thought leaders, global KOLs who design the clinical trials for future products that are coming down the pipeline. So you're able to connect with them and really hear firsthand from them their experiences, and how are these innovative products making a meaningful difference to patients' lives? And then, so there's the industry part that you need to stay abreast with, but there's also then leadership, coaching, and skills. And some of the newsletters I subscribe to, one McKinsey has some great newsletters.
Yes.
And then Harvard Business Review. And they're always kind of sharing best practices on what's working, what's not working. So I think, that's I guess what I kind of spend time on.
Okay, cool. Because one of the questions I will always ask leaders if I'm in a forum, I will ask them, what are you reading? What was the last article that you read that was insightful? What does your learning journey look like? And what amazes me is lots of times I ask that question and I get like a blank stare. In other words, maybe I've already arrived at the apex of being the leader and I don't really need to go there, but maybe on the industry side, I can do that. So you're talking about kind of a dual approach, industry side and myself, and how do I get better at what I'm doing?
Absolutely. No, I think the learning never stops. Um, the other thing I enjoy connecting with is leaders within the L&D community, and such as yourself. I'm very lucky. I have a lot of friends in the community in Bangkok, in Singapore, and I think they stay at the cutting edge. They know what is it that companies need to be
Yeah.
trained on, and so connecting with them, you always get ideas, and they will tell you, okay, this is what they're focusing on, and that then kind of makes me kind of think about how do we bring that into our organization, how do we share that with our leadership teams.
Hmm. Hmm. So amazing career from here, from accounting, put you the numbers in, to where you are today. Looking back on that journey, what are you most proud of?
Um, I have to say, and maybe because of the passion I have for people, it's the people that had amazing careers. You know, they went on to bigger roles. They moved countries. Um, I have somebody who used to report to me in Pakistan. He became a general manager in Korea, and now is a general manager in Europe. So as I look back, it's being able to contribute to their leadership journey, I think, is most satisfying. And then I stay in touch with a lot of these leaders across the world, and they kind of share their stories, their successes,
Yeah.
sometimes their frustrations as well. Um, and uh, one reason I always stay in touch with them is if I feel like I have an opportunity to get them back into our organization,
Yes.
that's something I like to do. So
Mhm.
um, uh, we currently have, even within my own leadership team, people that I've worked with in the past, because they saw, the mission that we have here in Asia. They wanted to be part of the team. And Like I say, it's when you work in these different companies, if you're able to have that family spirit, yeah, like they're your family members, they're your brothers and your sisters.
Yeah.
You don't lose that connection. Yes,
Mm.
no matter where they are, you want them to be successful.
Yeah. That was one of the questions I would always ask whenever I was in corporate and I was looking to hire a leader. Was I'd ask them, talk to me about the people that you worked with 2 jobs ago. How many of those people do you still connect with? And you'd be surprised. What you probably would not be surprised. Sometimes, well, we kind of went our separate ways, haven't kept in touch. Well, let's go to the next job. How many of those? Because I was trying to figure out the same thing you're talking about. Are you connecting with people? Because if you connect with them, they're going to say, "Hey, just got married, just had a new child, just got a new job. Can I bounce this off of you? You made an impact." So that was always one of my questions in trying to figure that out.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I think it's very important. And it's interesting that if you ask a lot of people, how did you get the role that you're currently in? They'll tell you it wasn't through LinkedIn, it wasn't through a recruitment agency, it was through somebody they knew.
They do.
So, that personal connection and personal reference makes a big difference these days.
Yeah. So that goes back to the beginning of the interview. You talked about building those relationships throughout. Yeah. If you had one piece of advice to give to your younger self, what would that be?
A great question. I think back, and maybe it's something that a lot of people do early on in their career, which is maybe focus and spend a lot of their time focus on building the career and being successful in the workplace, and maybe not enough time with the family. And I think it's about getting the priorities and the balance right. Family's most important. Yeah. Spending time with parents, quality time. My mother lives in England and in London, and I'm here in Singapore, and I call her every weekend, and I travel a lot like you do, and it's fascinating. My mom loves hearing my travel stories. Okay, where did you go? Who did you meet? What did you do? What kind of foods did you sample? And I think it's very, very important. I wish I'd spent more time. Again, I talked about my father. He passed away at a younger age.
Yeah.
And that's one of the regrets, that I feel like I didn't spend enough time early on. And I think it's important that young leaders, and here's the thing, all of my friends, everybody that I talk to, everybody's successful. So the success will come.
Yeah.
If you're passionate and if you're hardworking, that success will eventually come. So, I mean, we're surrounded by very, very successful people, but it's did we get the balance right along the way?
Mm. And your sons also live in London.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they're I have three. They're all married. They're having great careers in London. Yeah. I've tried many times to convince them to move to Asia, but they happen to be Manchester United fans, and they follow the football there in England. They've grown up there, and London is home, so they want to stay there.
Okay, that's cool. I want to do a quick shout out to some of our frequent listeners. Jim Moy, who's based in Washington, D.C. I call him a big shot attorney out of D.C., a very dear friend of mine. We were neighbors in Saudi Arabia for the same company years ago. Peter Piccinini, who is going to be an upcoming guest, started out in the arts, creative side. Now he manages wealth for very wealthy people. And he's going to give us some insights when he comes on board the show. So we talked about the goals of the show was to put together a program that will allow leaders like yourselves to talk through. I had one professor at a university says, every Friday, I tell all of my MBA students to listen into this show because it's a leadership masterclass. And you kind of brought that to the forefront today. So as we begin to close out, are there any key takeaways that you would like to leave the audience about, first of all, appearing on the show, or just some nuggets that you want to drop?
Firstly, thank you once again for inviting me, because it did give me an opportunity to reflect on and maybe we don't spend enough time in our day-to-day busy lives. Also, the importance of spending time on this, on leadership. I think what you're doing is fantastic. I mean, I wish there were more HR L&D leaders doing what you're doing, because it really does help people early on in their careers. So thank you for doing what you do, because I know it's making a difference in many, many people's lives. Maybe they don't always share it. You may not hear it back, but trust me, it's making a difference. And one day when you maybe you're walking along a street in New York, they'll see you, they'll recognize you, and if they bump into you, that's when they'll tell you the story of how it made a difference.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was on a flight coming from Dubai, coming back to New York. And, on the A380, you have the bar in the back, and the gentleman says, "Oh my God, yeah, you're the guy who does the show." And so exactly. that did happen. We had a great talk and whatnot. So as we begin to close out, I want to thank you for making time out of your busy schedule. What time is it in Singapore now?
It's 9:45 p.m. on a Friday.
Okay. Thank you for making time, across different time zones, and we really appreciate that. So I want you to hang on as we begin to close out, and I wanted to speak to you offline. So thank you, everyone. If you listen to the show, please like the show, subscribe to the show. We want to grow our user base. It's called a Leadership Masterclass on Friday morning. So thank you so much, and see you next Friday.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Take the CEO series with you anywhere, anytime. All episodes are now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and major streaming platforms. It's not just an interview. It's a masterclass in leadership.